Good evening, everybody. It's Tuesday. It's a very rainy Tuesday evening. In fact, I checked out the next 7 days or so, and it looks like it's going to be raining most days. So, those April showers sometimes extend into May. Maybe it'll bring us some June flowers instead. Now, the flowers are actually doing pretty good, too. It's just a rainy week, which is all right, because if you do what I do at 7 p.m. on weeknights, there's nothing like a rainy evening. Really isn't. It only adds a little bit of atmosphere. Atmosphere that we usually don't get until September and October when the sun goes down again, and we are left with those nice, chilly, spooky fall evenings. But for now, welcome to the show. It is the 13th day of May, 2025. And on the docket for tonight, we've got a friend coming back that we haven't spoken to in a while. Aristophanes' Revenge. Aristo. And, forget the first time he came on. First time that Aristo came on, we covered something that I think that was Chat GPT related, or I forget what it was. And the next day he went viral. I forget what the hell it is. I'm going to have to ask him. Anyway, tonight we're going to be talking. There's a lot of things going on in the world right now. Donald Trump is in Saudi Arabia. And there's clips from that I have for the second half. There's some, dribs and drabs of economic data that's coming in with all the tariffs that's supposed to destroy the world. And there's more. But what really caught my attention was the incoming 59 or 60 refugees from South Africa, white South African farmers. Now, I've been reading about the farm murders and what is described by many, even though depending on where you're going to go, including all of the chat bots out there and most of the major search engines and everything, they'll tell you it's debunked. It's not a genocide, what's going on in South Africa ever since the end of apartheid. It's not a genocide. It's, just people just don't like farmers at all. It's everybody's getting it down there. Anyway, President Trump was, cold enough to go and just say it, that this is why we're bringing them over here, and this has been going on, and the media is reluctant to even touch this story because they are too busy lying about genocides and other kind of, societal cleanses that are going on in other parts of the world, which aren't happening. Especially here in the United States, which is the basis for most of their political shenanigans. But anyway, tonight I want to bring on Aristo to talk about this because it really does present itself as some have called it, the final boss of cancel culture. Because there's a green light being given to some and a red light being given to others. And it is all along the lines of race. And it's very disturbing. It's a disturbing thing to realize, especially if you don't tend to see the world through a racial lens. Okay? To realize in one way or another, at one time or another, could have been earlier on, or it could be happening right now, to realize that despite what's going on inside of you and how you don't put people through these racial skin deep purity tests and you don't write people off for one reason or another, they're writing you off, and there is a system, there's a gigantic machine that is behind it that is not only encouraging people to be anti-white, but they are also programming into white people to be a little bit more self-loathing and disinterested in their own survival or anything. To be disinterested in themselves while everybody else is fine. You should know more about your culture, about your history, about whatever. What do you bring to the table? Oh, no, not you. You have your turn. You've had your turn. This is what's going on around us. It's disturbing. And when this popped up and you start seeing some of the media, revulsion, the idea that there's these farmers being brought in from South Africa, I said, okay, well, we got to talk about this. We must. and I saw a post by Aristophanes Revenge, and I said, hey, man, it's been a while. He'd already been on the schedule for a few weeks, but I said, boom, this has got to be the topic. And I think it's going to be a good one tonight. It'll be hot button, and I hope we can keep it respectful. And yeah, respectful. The lines will be open, and 2 hours will fly by in a flash. Absolutely will. Okay, well, with that, let me see. Do I have anything else to let you guys know? Oh, yeah, two quick things. First of all, go to quitefrankly.tv. You hit the forum tab, and I have a couple of things pinned to the top of the forum. Number one, the Quite Frankly newsletter and fan photo submissions. I would love to we're starting to build up fan feature stuff for June and July and all that. Would love to get you guys in on that. Please, by all means, attach pictures of your family vacations, graduations, first communions, whatever it is. Let us know what's going on in your lives and in the upcoming summer editions of the Bulletin. We'd love to feature it. I'll also be, I don't know, I got a lot of feedback on the allergies, the allergy bomb topic that we had last night, feedback and history lessons on the American elm tree and all that. We'll do that. Maybe that'll be in the forum as well. Here's the other thing there too. Here's the other thing here as well. The Film Club official thread is up. I've also mirrored this on the Twitter community. So the Prestige, the film club that we're going to be doing on Monday, this upcoming Monday, the 19th, it's going to be live. It's going to be public on the 19th after Quite Frankly wraps up. And we're going to be talking about the Prestige. It's right here. Now, I want to say the link for the voicemails is right here in the forum. I've also put it in the Twitter community mirroring post. Okay. We would love to prioritize more and more calls, voicemails for the Culture Club meetings, as it feels more like you're in the room, you know? And of course, if you're going to leave a written contribution to the thread, then just make sure it's as concise as possible so we can read as many as possible. And I can't wait to do this one. It's a really great movie. All right. So that's that. We will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's roll!
Okay. All right. So this is what we woke up to. This is what I woke up to. Welcome to Quite Frankly. This is, I'm Frank. See what I did there? You see what I did there, Frank? Anyway, I woke up this morning and I saw this. It was really a nice scene. I love, to be honest, and just to put it out there, to get started, I love the sight of rooms full of people who have gone through their studies, that they're swearing allegiance to the United States. They want to become citizens. And I have to imagine, until you show me otherwise, that you have the best of intentions in your heart. But either way, I like this because I've always wanted to see some kind of a lifeline being sent out there to the farmers of South Africa, namely the white farmers of South Africa. Here is what we saw today. This is about 59, or the first batch of what I think is going to be just 60 farmers. Many of them, I guess, family units and all that stuff. They're coming over here. I don't know if they're getting some land. I mean, we should empower them to do what they do, no? So they know how to speak English, and they are highly skilled, and agriculture should probably become a little bit more of a focus for us these days. You know, we're trying to become a little bit less dependent on the rest of the world. That would be awesome. It was nice. Very, very, very nice. Anyway, we got this. This is from the Gateway Pundit. Trump shames the media for ignoring genocide of white farmers. Quote, if it were the other way around, they'd talk about it. It's a genocide that's taking place that you see people don't want to write about, the U.S. president told reporters, but it's a terrible thing that's taking place. Oh, God, the pictures of the feet and the flabby bellies and the side of the... Look what I have to deal with. Oh, what is that, a skin tag? I'm just trying to read the news here. Get your feet out of my face. But it's a terrible thing that's taking place. Farmers are being killed. They happen to be white. But whether they're white or black, it makes no difference to me. But white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa. And the newspapers, the media, the television media doesn't even talk about it. If it were the other way around, they'd talk about it. That would be the only story that they would talk about. Trump finished by stressing, I don't care who they are. I don't care about their race, their color. I don't care about their height, their weight. I don't care about anything. I just know that what's happening is terrible. I have people that live in South Africa. They say it's a terrible situation taking place. So we've essentially extended citizenship to those people to escape from the violence and come here. It's something else. It really is. Now, like I said, I've been reading about this in one way or another since I was in high school. And, you know, this has been apparently it started since like the mid to late 90s. And it's just nuts. And depending on who you're talking to, this is a claim that's been debunked. But aside from reading about this for years, like 30 years now, it's hard not to assign motive. Hard not to assign motive as to what this is all about when you have South African political parties who campaign on this desire to wipe out the white farmer. I mean, today alone on Twitter, it was full of videos of people like Julius Malema calling for that sort of thing over the years. I mean, this is just readily available. It's all over the place. But there's more on this, and I want to bring in our good buddy, Aristophanes Revenge. You know him as Aristo on Twitter. Aristo, how you doing, man?
Hey, what's going on, Frank? Nice to be back on.
It's great to be back. You know, before we get started, the first time you were on, it was the night before you went viral for like the first time. What was that? Was that the Chat GPT story?
I think it might have been. I'm trying to remember. We talked about something politics-wise, and I think like the next day is when I did the Chat GPT thread on Dan, where I popularized that prompt that lets you jailbreak it to where it wouldn't, have any of those barriers where it refused to tell you any prompts that were controversial.
That's right, Dan. That's right, dude. It was the night before. I remember all of a sudden you're all over on Reddit and 4chan and all over the place. I said, "Holy shit!" That was
crazy couple of days for me, man. I still remember it.
Well, it's only been better for you. I mean, you're one of the. I love reading everything that comes out of your account. It's one of those places that I go to get really deep into what is trending in the cultural kind of news, whether especially as it pertains to memes. And I mean, there's a whole line. There's a whole line of information you get away from the memes that are popular at any given time. But I mean, there's a lot to be said about this today. Some people would wake up and see, passing headlines about 59 or 60 refugees coming over from South Africa. But then if you get into the weeds and you see who is cheering and who is, I mean, it's nuts. Let's start with Matt Walsh, okay? And then I just want to let you run on this for a little bit because you also said some stuff is great. Matt Walsh said the following. He said, "The Great Replacement is real. If you had any doubt, this story about the South African refugees should clear it up for you. The left wants unchecked third world migration because they want to make America less white. That's it. It's that simple. That's why they oppose the white refugees, because white refugees defeat the whole purpose of the program." You tend to agree based on your writing. Go right ahead and tell us, lay some groundwork down for this talk tonight.
Yeah. So the way that I guess the a good way to look at it is to kind of start at the beginning, which in the case of the immigration debate is kind of looking at 1965 when they amended our immigration laws. And honestly, it has a lot of mirrors to the H-1B, like the skilled immigration issue that we have now as well, is that a lot of the debates around that in Congress and lobbyists, things like that, revolve around the fact that for skilled worker visas, we have things like quotas or caps for different countries. So, if we can only take a certain amount of visa immigrants in a year, we're basically saying like they can't all be Indian, right? Like you gotta share the love, you gotta spread it around, I guess is the way this works. So in 1965, we had caps on where immigrants could come from. And that meant, there would only be a certain number of Mexicans or a certain number of Canadians or whatever. And the big thing that really changed in 1965 is that they removed those caps because they said they were discriminatory, which meant we have some number of immigrants that they'd be shooting for or willing to accept, but they could come from anywhere. And so naturally, they all started coming from Mexico, and it's a separate issue from even the illegal problem. But um, this particularly became the play starting in the 70s and into the 80s. The people of the 60s, the counterculture of the 60s, started to grow up and started to get into politics and into positions of power. They became professors. They did all those things, went into government, the long march through the institutions, if you've heard people refer to that. And it becomes really obvious that, particularly in the 80s and in the 90s is when it really starts to become apparent that it's kind of a strategy to import a new voter base, even if they have to wait a generation for people to have kids here because of birthright citizenship. They were willing to wait because as long as they could keep the immigration spigot on, they could effectively, generation by generation, claw in like a bigger market share. And you have to think these are people who don't have a connection to the land, to the history. It's not like they're people who, have any opinion on the Civil War or whatever. They don't have a background in the country. And also, they're not going to usually be people coming who have any kind of generational wealth whatsoever. So that's going to mean for the banks to get them in on it, they get new creditors, right? Because if you show up to this country with nothing and you want a car or you want a house or something like that, you're going to have to take a loan. And so that's part of it. The other part of it, though, is the fact that the type of people who can compete against the political cabal that runs this country, the only place where new ideas from smart or effective enough people to really try to upset the apple cart could come from is really going to be middle class white people. And they're just as threatened by lower class white people because in a country where everyone wants to be middle class and we're supposed to have more class mobility than anybody else, um, that becomes your number one threat. So essentially, it's a race to the bottom where you import all these different groups of people, whether they're Somalians in Minnesota or it's all of Latin America into California or just everywhere at this point. I mean, even go to Idaho, you're going to find them. But the point is that you turn everything tribalistic. You go and you turn on the race button after spending decades telling white people and cudgeling them over the head that everybody's the same, race doesn't matter. We should all be colorblind. The problem is the only people who got that message of being colorblind and treating everyone the same for the most part were white people. So everybody else is tribalistic. Like by and large, Hispanics, Asians, blacks, everybody's tribalistic and has their own resentments or prefers their own people. Or the Indians are a great example that have been coming in droves for the last 10 years or so, are willing to work as a coherent team collectively against everybody else. And it obviously leads to problems. You can't run a country like that. I mean, you can't have a multicultural and a multi-ethnic country. You kind of get to choose one. And it's better if you have one that's culturally and ethnically homogenous, but it's not manageable when there's no kind of unity, whether it's ethnic, whether it's cultural. If you don't have either of those, you're just screwed. It's a race to the bottom. and you end up looking like South Africa, as an example. And South Africa is kind of the end stage, honestly, of what the Democrats seem to kind of be shooting for,
Yeah.
where you have liberal white South Africans who are in the capital in Pretoria, mostly working in government, mostly working in academia. They aren't working in careers or jobs where they have assets that can be like looted, burned, attacked, destroyed, whatever. And they live in gated communities in the capital and they act like everything's fine and nothing's wrong. But for everybody who is, the farmers are the biggest example that you see used here. Um, there's farm murders all the time. And, the liberal media has been denying it. But I have friends who are in South Africa who are part of private security forces there that are meant to keep people safe. Guys you can follow on Twitter like Twatterboss or Canine Reaper or any number of guys who are on there will regularly share videos about what the conditions are like there. And essentially, it's just one big race to the bottom. They after apartheid ended, the Africans basically took over because there were more of them and they don't take care of the infrastructure. There isn't really any law and order. It's all just kind of tribalism where different tribes compete with each other and everything's corrupt, everybody's bribed, and it's just terrible. Um, but in terms of domestic policy, the Episcopalians really showed their
Oh,
hand as
okay.
to how they feel about this
Yeah.
because we told them, hey, if you want to keep this $50 million a year grant for resettling migrants, you've got to resettle these like 49 Afrikaners that we're, bringing in as refugees. So these people had no problem resettling millions of random poor third worlders from Latin America and Africa. No problems at all. And then you go ahead and you want to import 49 middle class white people who can provide for themselves and who have skills and have families,
Aristo,
and suddenly they lose their
I
minds.
got the quotes right here. Take a listen to this. This is in a letter to members of the church. So this is this Episcopal church. They had a bishop or somebody said that 2 weeks ago the government informed Episcopal Migration Ministries that under the terms of our federal grant we are expected to resettle white Afrikaners from South Africa whom the U.S. government has classified as refugees. In light of our church's steadfast commitment to racial justice, so I guess that means there is no racial justice for white people who are in a position, whereas everybody who crawls over the southern border over the last 4 years was an asylum seeker. Nobody could ever really tell us what they're seeking asylum from, aside from there was money over here to be claimed that they couldn't have anywhere else. But light of our church's steadfast commitment to racial justice and reconciliation and our historic ties with the Anglican Church of Southern Africa, we are not able to take this step. Accordingly, we have determined that by the end of the federal fiscal year, we will conclude our refugee resettlement grant agreements with the U.S. federal government. Aristo, talk about working the program. When a Marxist front group refuses government money, you know that this is a visceral hatred.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, right? They couldn't even swallow their pride and keep the grift going, right? They couldn't. This is 49 people, just 49 people. And they are too prideful and too full of hubris to even just like shut up and color and take this on the chin and just whatever, let it happen and keep making up their money. They're passing up a $50 million a year grant to basically just make some principled stand that they hate white people. And that's a big part of it. When you look at immigration discussions, look at what the average liberal thinks about the idea of, immigrants coming from places like Europe or, Canada or Ukraine or just any country that is in, and even Asia to a point. They hate Cubans, they hate the Vietnamese, they hate any of the demographic groups that generally don't lean into their ideology when they come here, which is a big part of it. Um, but it's insane. It's such a mask off moment when they're just like, yeah, we'll let millions of brown people in here. But as soon as it's 49 white people, we're just going to take our ball and go home. And part of it is there's an incentive game that's at play here. right? So you start out and the government starts the bad incentive by paying these organizations, whether it's the Episcopalian Church or it's Catholic Charities or it's the Jewish one, I think it's HAIS or something like that. So there's an organization like this for just about every faith, and they get money when they resettle a refugee. And so what happens when you start giving people grants from the government for this kind of thing, whether it's, say, housing the homeless or anything like that, when you do that, they might get the bright idea that rather than fixing these problems, they want to make them worse and then make money managing them in perpetuity. So, homeless people don't get off the street. They just get to subsist forever on, things that come from grant money. Because those NGOs, if the homeless problem was fixed, then they wouldn't have a job. They'd have to go do something else. And the same thing is true of the refugees. But what they found when you hear stories of illegal immigrants with like manila envelopes with like bus passes or train tickets in them and instructions on where to go before they're even over the Rio Grande and into the United States, that's because these companies have figured out that, for the sake of argument on the numbers, if they get paid $3,000 a head to resettle a refugee, they can spend $1,000 on getting someone new over here. So they're now financially incentivized to bring illegal immigrants into the country. It becomes a business and they make money off of it. And the DNC is all too happy to support it because they're going to use racial resentments to go ahead and try to make those people vote as a block. They're going to bribe them. I mean, look at Minnesota and the Somalians and the way they behave.
Yep.
But what you're going to end up getting is this race to the bottom where you have a bunch of different racial groups who are all divided and easy to manage because none of them is a clear majority. And then all you have to do is bribe each group. You just bribe the people in charge of each group, which is kind of like what they do with black people in the South. They go ahead and they approach all the guys who run the various churches out there, the Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton types, and they go ahead and they get their people to vote as a block because they get taken care of. They get government jobs, they get grants, they get policies that are favorable to them, expansion of welfare programs, and then just straight up bribes for the people at the top. So they want to recreate the dynamic that the DNC has fostered with black people in new groups that they can import here while reducing the market share of their enemy group, which is heritage American regular white people who are from here. And a big part of doing that is, you can connect the dots on a lot of stuff. You can say Big Pharma suddenly has an interest that's aligned with the DNC when it comes to the opioid crisis, which mostly was killing rural lower class whites. If you look at, say, a lot of Republicans and the reason why the GOP has never really worked very hard to stop this, you look at the fact that, like, say, the Koch brothers, they own a lot of meatpacking plants and other places that are infamous for mostly using an illegal workforce. So when you can get enough pillars of American industry and wealth to sign on to your plan because they'll make more money or they'll have an incentive for it, it's really easy to get the political cover and the donor money to make these things happen. And it becomes not just one conspiracy of, like, say, the DNC wants to reduce how many white people there are so that way they can win elections more concurrently and there's more corruption. But it becomes everybody is taking their pound of flesh from the deal.
Yeah.
You're getting cheap labor for some people. You're getting different types of business for others. The banks are getting fresh loans from people without generational wealth. And the DNC is getting the political ramifications of that. And their strategy is entirely revolving around this.
It's very easy to see, and that is that ties into a conversation we have on this show often about political autonomy at the state level, and about the dream of not necessarily that we have this dream team federal government where we have a sweeping election and it's just a whole bunch of Patrick Henrys are elected and we're able to clean up and resize the federal government to its originalist form. It's more so about how can we just start nullifying the federal government? And you can't do that if you have no political autonomy at the state level. You want to talk about the pound of flesh? I just had Rich Barris on the show a week ago, and he was talking about how, the what so-called red states take from the federal government to subsist is substantial. There might be a political culture there that is far different than a blue state or a blue city, but it's very hard for this to start working in favor of just the good of the union if everybody is just lining up for the dole in one way or another. And you know what, on the social end of things, it's true there too, how it's very hard for people to swallow this, especially white Americans, because most of the people noticing how government is set up at this point, because this is all, when we look at what's going on with governments, with the media, all that stuff, how foreign aid is set up, the judicial system, how that's been infiltrated, DAs and judges, and the way that the media chooses to report on crime and other public safety issues that have racial components to it. It's a terrible thing to realize, because as you said, when we were brought up, when we were coming out of the 90s, we were in this like kumbaya zone. And I know that you're familiar with this graph. We were talking about it before, and I'm glad you brought it up. This came up in conversation because we were talking about this study in 2021 or something like that. We were getting together to talk about it, and it got a lot of attention for the time that it came out. And for those of you who are listening to this in rerun on podcasts or something like that, it's how racial groups rate each other. Okay. And it was talked a little bit about, very telling, by category of white, black, Hispanic, or Asian. It shows that the only ethnic group, let me get out of the way here, that the only ethnic group that has been systemically trained and shamed into not valuing its own history, its own identity, its culture, or even, its own place in society is white respondents. If you just look at it, and we were talking about this about 4 years ago now, it's insane. So not only do have white people been kept in this line there, where everybody's equal, and nobody's better than anybody. Everybody else is pretty comfortable in preferring to be around, for the most part, members of their own ethnic groups, and when it comes to judging and judging other ethnic groups around them, it seems to me that everybody, Asian, Hispanic, and black, all agree that white people are just the pits. So it's crazy, because this right here is evidence of actual systemic involvement, if you ask me. And I'm not even going as far as personally blaming any of these groups for being this way that they are today, if this is how the culture war has been fought for a few generations at this point.
Well, you have to ask the question, maybe we're the ones who are messed up, right? Like maybe white people are the ones who aren't looking at the world the way everybody else does, and maybe it's our problem. There was a tweet that went pretty viral and caused a lot of discussion a couple weeks ago, it might have been last month. And so this guy tweets out a picture of like Michael Jordan, and I think like Michael Jordan and Bill Cosby and Michael Winslow, like a bunch of famous black people from culture in the 90s, and Will Smith from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And he says, in the 1990s, we were defeating racism and everything was great and everybody didn't see color, and then Barack Obama got elected and messed it all up and yada yada yada. And everyone was basically like, dude, I think the best comment was actually a black guy who quoted him and said, you might have stopped seeing color, but it wasn't that racism was gone. It's just that you were being entertained by black people on TV. And it struck a chord with me the way that he wrote it. Was basically, it pretty much drove the point that, hey, at a macro level, obviously exceptions and individuals apply to anything. But at a macro level, the relationship between whites and blacks only really changed on the white end. Like at large, black people didn't really change. They still had a bias against whites for the most part, still a lot of resentment. nothing really changed. But my generation, I mean, I'm 35, millennial, was a little kid in the 90s, we grew up being told like, oh yeah, color blindness, none of this matters, everyone's the same, and that's how I was brought up, just
Yep.
like a lot of people were. And the problem is there's a lot of cognitive dissonance that needs to be broken with realizing, hey, there's people who hate you out there that you don't necessarily hate. But I mean, just look at like the comments on like the Carmelo Anthony give send
Oh,
go. I
oh,
mean, there's
bro.
there's black people saying like, yeah, kill that white boy, whatever.
Yeah.
They were trying to have their OJ Simpson moment where they were like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. Who cares that he killed that white kid? And that leads me, I guess, to the thing with Hendricks, the mom in Minnesota who flipped off that pervy Somalian guy who was videotaping her there, and she called some kid the N-word because he was rifling through her bag. Um, that event is important, not because of what she did. It's not even like a tacit approval of how she handled the situation or not, but it's important because that Give Send Go, that donation began to compete with Carmelo Anthony. And I think Matt Walsh, surprisingly, I don't normally trust people from the Daily Wire, but he's been pretty solid for a little while now. And he said, hey, this is like the final boss of cancel culture. Um, the fact that we even have to have any sort of conversation or there's any degree of argument over which is worse, a black guy murdering a white guy or a woman calling a child a slur, there's no competition with that. But you've got tons of black people who, when they speak freely on places like Twitter or the Give Send Go comments, they think it's justified. They think it's justified to kill someone if you feel they're disrespecting you. They think it's justified to kill a white person for saying a racial slur. And that's not how adults behave. That's not a logical worldview. Those two events are not equivalent to each other at all. And so it was a really big rebuke of kind of the BLM era of how, race has been used as a cudgel against, white people, against conservatives, etc., that enough people at the grassroots level were willing to donate to Shiloh Hendricks being able to insulate herself from that incident to where she raised more money than Carmelo Anthony did. That's narratively, that's important.
It is. It is, and I can see that because, like you said before, but when it comes to Shiloh in particular in Minnesota, I don't see very many people who are suggesting that the what is the correction to the situation, to the way that the culture is right now. What does the correction look like? I don't see anybody suggesting that it is. We need to be able to have liberal use of racial slurs or the ability to use a racial slur in public, or that was the problem in and of itself. The inability to use a racial slur in public was the problem. It's just more so, like you said there, people are starting to come to a very ugly understanding of
Yeah,
what's
well, it's kind of establishing it's an attempt to establish the dominance of objective reality,
yeah,
right? Of like, hey, murder is worse than, calling someone a slur. They're not even remotely equivalent. And that's something which, until recently, there was a massive power structure revolving around enforcing something like that, which is completely illogical. And it's a real sea change, given anyone who's been paying any damn attention over the last 10, 15 years in particular. It's a real sea change to be able to push back against that and say, no, it's not. We're going to give more demonstrable popular public support to this event than that event because of this. And there's a lot of conversations about this going on now because for one, you look at the 90s and even, the first half of the 2000s until the 2008 crash, and people, the economy was better. The social fabric of America was much more intact than it is now. We didn't have people on social media putting people on blast and trying to get them canceled. We didn't have all this weird
yeah.
internet schizophrenia. Um, Things were very different. And I think when people are comfortable, it's very easy to ignore this stuff. But as conditions keep getting worse, whether it's the social fabric or it's the economic fabric of the country, people start feeling the pinch and they start paying more attention, and it becomes easier for them to actually engage with what's going on in the country and what's wrong. And it kind of becomes our last chance to try to fix these things before we eventually just hit some point of no return where we're just frickin' Brazil, which is, obviously not what we want.
Let me ask you then, because that's something that a lot of people are, those of us who are coming to darker realities about how many people see yourself, and the relationships you have and all that, those are obviously, they're there. But this is really just about making sure, this kind of programming is about making sure that there's a lot less cohesion in society, that new bonds are harder and harder to be made, that people don't want to share spaces with each other, that they take the programming, the messaging, and they take it to heart and they apply it to personal relationships that otherwise would probably serve them very good. Now, admitting and acknowledging the brand of hatred that is in control at the administrative levels in our society is one thing. But I'm sure you get this a lot too. The most sensitive thing that needs to be addressed is what can be done, because in your estimation, what can be done, I should ask, because what we're describing here is a very specific brand of war. It's not as much kinetic. You can say it gets kinetic during a Michael Brown Ferguson situation, 2020 lockdowns where, we're having, Minnesota going crazy in Baltimore and everything else going on there too. But far more damage has been done, and I would say equal damage done in a psychological and economical sense than kinetic at this point. But now what? I mean, what can be done, do you think, without some sort of an overcorrection that gives these Marxists the race war that they've been looking for? Do you think that's possible?
Well, so first of all, just because you brought up, community being a more difficult thing and the social fabric of the United States, I did want to plug a book someone else wrote. It's a really good resource. It was written in 2000 by Robert Putnam, but it's called Bowling Alone. It's a very good book about kind of the fragmenting of American community. So just wanted to put that out there because it's worth reading. It's a great book. But in terms of the question, though, I think that we can thread the needle on this because, I think my start on Twitter was working for a friend who had an open source intel company. It was Mike Shelby running Forward Observer. Some of you guys may have heard of him. But I was helping him with low intensity conflict analysis during the first wave of BLM. And that was really when I kind of started to get on Twitter because I was using it to collect information on what was going on with the riots, what was going on with Antifa and like the far left, in the streets. And honestly, if you take that coordination away, black people aren't really the problem at scale. They're not really a strategic issue at any kind of scale when you take away the people who make these events possible. And like when we look at BLM, all of the most dangerous riots all happened in jurisdictions where you had liberal control of the police force, you had political top cover at the state level. Like if they tried to do that and say, let's say Austin as an example, BLM, George Floyd dies. If they tried to do a big BLM movement in Austin, despite the fact that Greg Abbott sucks, he's terrible, at the very least, if Austin didn't get that under control, he'd mobilize DPS and the National Guard to get it under control. So what you see, though, is that all the big hotspots that are getting most of the news attention and all the riots are, a really corrupt big blue city like Atlanta, an absolutely retarded blue state and city like Minnesota, Minneapolis, and then you look at places like Portland and Seattle. So those are places that are very permissive environments for Antifa and for all those types of groups. And at the end of the day, they're being ran by different NGOs who are providing the money, providing the coordination. They have cadre, they have trainers, they have organizers who supply funds, things like those pallets of bricks that were showing up in random places before riots during the second wave of BLM.
And not only that, but the bricks are one thing, but to also be able to see the flashpoint at many of these, riots and these these nights and weekends worth of property destruction in one city or another, it was usually a white, black-clad Marxist, little scrawny white kid in a ski mask that was the one to throw the first brick through the first storefront window that kind of just sparked it for everybody else. There was always an agent provocateur. You felt it. That was coming from somewhere else. And then, of course, once the fire's lit, the fire's lit. But you can see the organization. You're spot on with that.
Well, and it was always to really provide cover. Like when we look at any of the places that had any really sustained long-term activity that really had any kind of goal, it was mostly like, say, the Hatfield Federal Courthouse in Portland is a great example. Day after day after day, those guys were sieging it, and we got good videos of like Bortak jacking those guys up. Um, but it was all white people, right? Like it's a BLM protest, but it's in Portland, and it's just like it's a bunch of junkies, crackheads, trust fund kids going to a liberal arts college, or junkie trust fund kids is a big part of it. But at the end of the day, they're things are different now than they were in the first Trump administration. There's been a lot of improvements on positive control and kind of having our people in order, which is a work in progress, I'll admit. Um, but at the end of the day, the head of the snake that you can go for is going to be these NGOs, these political groups that are out there funding them. And with the type of surveillance state that we have today, it would not be hard to go and punk those people if they tried to do it again. Go after Open Society and Soros, go after Act Blue, go after all these groups that are funneling this money around. And the other big thing is that it definitely does do some damage that we've cut off things like USAID, which get used to funnel money into these groups. So a lot of the time when you go, hey, why are Democrats willing to throw money into a furnace for the slightest advantage in the culture war? A lot of the time it's not their money. A lot of the time it's your taxpayer money that they've figured out how to bilk from the government for their own needs. So it becomes a self-licking ice cream cone when Democrats are in control, they embezzle money, tax money from the government and figure out ways to launder it into these groups, which then go ahead and engage in this kind of activism to get more control and to kind of crack the consensus and make it look like they're the majority, make it look like they're the most powerful. And it becomes very self-reinforcing, but that network is really starting to fall apart. It was already showing a lot of cracks, and part of that is because as time has marched on, they've been hiring really incompetent people. They don't have a deep bench to hire from, and their own ideology and their own purity spiraling is starting to damage them. I mean, they wanted to put, of all people, David Hogg is one of the guys in charge of the DNC, and they just kicked him out of the running because he's a white guy and they have rules for representation based on things like race and gender. So they kicked David Hogg out of the running for that, and he was one of the guys who won their election there because he was a white guy. No sympathy for him there, but and then the real reason being for that is he wanted to keep funding progressive candidates for Congress and the DNC, et cetera. And the donors and the older guys and the James Carville types at the DNC have figured out that this just isn't working. And they're trying to kind of pivot into a neoliberal direction instead of a super progressive one to go lick their wounds because that brand has become toxic, especially after the 2024 election.
Yeah, it has been. I don't know how this plays with anybody. Like here's a tweet from John Pavlovitz. He says, I'm a white person who doesn't want to live in a nation made up of nothing but white people. I hope white people here are willing to stand and say the same thing in the face of this vile administration. How does that message play with anybody? I just don't get it. And then on the other hand, we've got this. And I wish that there would be cracks in the connections that these groups, whether they be non-governmental or governmental, have to, whether, since we're talking about minority, Black, Asian, Hispanic communities, I would love to see those that just break. I mean, if you look at the voting trends, there are things happening. There is some momentum that is promising there. But to your point, I mean, there's just a lot of things that are ingrained generationally there. And I know that a lot of people paying attention to what's going on in their communities with all of these foreign nationals that have been brought in. That's strained a lot of decades old political relationships between, say black communities and the Democrat Party, where they can tell that they're being reprioritized because there is a specific program that's being run right now, and they feel pretty safe with black Americans' political allegiances, at least to a degree. But then you have this, and this is just incredible. This thing right here. We went from Michelangelo's David to this 12-foot statue of a big frumpy black woman that's been erected in Times Square. Now listen, I'm sick of this shit. Back in, we were talking about the 90s a lot tonight. If we're watching a football game in the 1990s, and when it's time for the national anthem, there is an all-female pilot flyover, I would have been like,
duck.
Cool. Okay, I mean, maybe back then I would be like, yeah, go get them, ladies. As a kid, they cool. Those are our jets, and it's an American girl. Although the girls can do it too. Whatever. It would be a lot more cool now. I mean, it's just like I see shit like this, and I say, okay, I know what you're doing. And I just wish that, for example, the reason why I put this up is because I wish that black women would be the loudest in their disgust over this, that some Marxist art committee in New York City decided to use the lowest common denominator as subject matter purely for the sake of social antagonism. And I'm sure it works for a few people, but I guess all you need is a few squeaky wheels. But let's be honest here. In an age where statues of Washington and Jefferson are being removed from public property, to replace them with statues of black women who at any day, it's like a Walmart shopper, your average Walmart shopper. I mean, that's political conquest in and of itself. There's so many more flattering ways to represent black figures in culture and in community. I mean, this is, you would think, I would hope that they would be outraged about this, because how do you not see this as a political organization fashioning a piece of antagonistic art outside of, from you?
They don't care, man. That's the thing. I think I saw a statistic somewhere, and I might get the exact number wrong here, but they said out of all of the black women who have a college degree, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 68 to 70% of them work for the government. Like the overwhelming majority. It's just jobs, jobs, jobs. They care more about that. They don't give a damn what, white liberal people are doing. They don't care. They really don't. And to be honest, talking about how maybe white people need to confront the way other races see us in America, there's a lot of things that, especially when it comes to the political level with the GOP, we all need to reevaluate and we need to think of differently. Um, One of those things is going to be, hey, if they were tearing down statues of Washington and Jefferson and Lee as a dominance display against American culture, we can tear down statues too. And I think people just need to maybe grow some balls here and actually like advocate for doing those things. I mean, man, I live in Houston, and we have like a 90-foot tall statue of like some Indian cat demon in Pearland now. It's freaking ridiculous. Like I'm not even particularly religious, but I know that I don't really want like massive idols to like foreign Eastern religions like erected in the middle of my city. That's kind of weird. Um, but these things, they're dominance displays, and they try to couch them in this kind of moral high ground where they say, okay, you don't like the Shaniqua statue in Times Square, you must be racist. That's why you hate it. And it's because they trip you up in trying to get you to explain the game to them to say, well, no, I hate it because this is a progressive dominance display over making things ugly, so that when we say they're ugly, you can call us racist. And for 50 years now, we've made that into like the ultimate original sin that you're not supposed to be able to walk away from. And that is changing now as things get worse. People are getting a bit bolder and learning to speak with their chest a little bit better. But we've got a ways to go, and a big part of that is that the people are a lot stronger in their beliefs than most elements of the GOP.
Oh yeah.
Most of them are cowards. Tons of them need to be primaried. And it's either because they're comfortable with the status quo, or they're used to just taking directions from other people and enjoying their cushy job, or because they're outright being bribed. Um, so we need people who actually give a damn. We need to fill Congress with more of those. But the problem is then, we passed what? Wasn't it like we passed 6 bills so far in the beginning of this administration? Congress isn't doing anything. So you have anyone in Congress who's actually worth a damn isn't just squaring off against the DNC share of the Congress and, of Senate and the House. They're also squaring off against all the people who will gladly take a payout to deliberately sabotage things and keep the status quo going. They just want to run out the clock.
Yep. I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, I'm glad you brought up the other thing there too, with certain groups in noticing how they gaslight you, because the powers that be, especially when you talk about propaganda and narrative trendsetters, they'll express that it's a no. How many times do we get a year? Do we get some sort of a countdown clock to the day that white people become not the majority in this country? I mean, there are countdown clocks out there. They express that it is a noble thing that society is being made less white year by year. But if you listen to that and say, holy shit, why is this being reported on in some celebratory sense? And then why is it being juxtaposed against how many people are flooding in across the border? And you realize, holy shit, they're replacing us. And it has to be something to do with, the electoral situation here in the country, because the people running the world that are trying to redistrict the world and see the United States or South America, the North Africa, Middle East, they see those places as districts. They don't care about sovereignty of cultures or economies or anything like that. Why the hell would they? They obviously don't care about who's coming across the southern border, even less than they care about us. So eventually there's going to have to be some sort of a culling of everybody. But for now, we see what they're doing. They're announcing what they're doing. And then if you say they're replacing us, they'll run to their newsrooms and they'll gaslight the public on how white nationalists are concocting replacement theories. And
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. But
Well, that's why what Matt Walsh did was important. I mean, I'm not a fan of the Daily Wire for a variety of reasons. I'll just put that out there. But when you have a guy who is a very mainstream conservative commentator with, 3.2 million followers on just Twitter alone, I don't know what he has on other platforms. He's someone who a lot of mainstream people who are not super plugged into politics do listen to. And having a guy like that come out and just go, yeah, hey, replacement theory is real. They literally that's just why they're doing it, which is stuff that, the online right, we've been saying this for well over a decade and, getting banned for it, getting doxxed for it, getting persecuted for it. But this is kind of starting to reach the top of the hill where we've pushed the Overton window just straight up frickin' Sisyphus with the boulder style to a point where mainstream voices are saying to hell with it, I'm going to say it. And that's an improvement at least. I'll take improvements as long as we're heading in the right direction. That's good. But in terms of the future for anybody, when you go and think about when you go and you think about that chart about how different races see each other, consider what governance looks like in a country. Okay, like when you have a group that looks at everybody the same and they're in charge of a country, how are they going to treat those other groups, right? You have the chart right there. You have white people rating every single race, including their own, right there in the same band. Well, how are they going to treat blacks, Asians, Hispanics, right? They're going to treat them about the same. But what happens if another group's in charge? What if the Hispanics are in charge? How are they going to treat white people? How are they going to treat black people? How are they going to treat Asians? Um, that's that's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for internal conflict, dysfunction, war, tribalism. After a fashion, basically the only people who can govern with any kind of neutrality are white people. And there's people who don't want to admit that, they don't want to acknowledge it, but it's true at large, at scale. Um, So that kind of is the situation we're in. You know, what happens when, say, we get outnumbered by the other groups and then they're in charge, they're going to brutalize everybody else because that is the human default of tribalism in a multi-ethnic or multicultural society is whoever can get a hold of the cudgel does everything they can do to keep hold on that cudgel for as long as possible and bash everybody else until they're king of the hill. It's a race to the bottom, and that's not something that's gonna that there's no way where we can have that happen to us and still be competitive on the global stage. The whole American dream, empire, nation will just crumble and fracture. And there's a lot of people who would really like to see that happen.
Well, you've already talked about the really big issue that we have with not really having a functional Congress, and how we're already 5 months into this year, 5 months into I don't know. Actually, we were talking about the end of January was the inauguration, so 4 months of Trump, something about that. We just talked about the 100-day mark, and again, it's every day there's a new headline about how the new budget is really just bottom heavy, and we're talking about instead of trillions of dollars worth of cuts, and we're talking about hundreds of millions when the new spending takes place, and things are just being moved around because you can't get any support, and not only that, but even if you had lockstep support of what little margins you have in the Senate and the House, you also are not filibuster proof with the suicide bombers that are in the Senate on the minority end. So I just wonder, with what the hell is going to be available for Donald Trump over the next 3 years, and what could be built up for, hopefully, what would be a successor of his in the 4 years after that, with perhaps a little bit more momentum, a little bit more of a majority. That just seems so pie in the sky and crazy, considering all of the factors and all of the influential money and organizations that come in to actually influence the makeup of a Congress. That's why I always talk about, well, what the hell can we nullify on a state level? And how can a state that is serious about living in a free country or a representative union again do to make themselves, autonomous enough to say, nope, line item vetoing that, and you can keep your highway funds. We don't need them anymore. Because it just sounds crazy. All that yeah, go ahead.
And I'll give you a black pill first and then a white pill here.
Okay.
The black pill is I know someone who just recently left the Presidential Economic Advisory Council in frustration. So he went ahead and he left in frustration. Was telling me how things were going over there while he was there. He's a guy who's lots of experience in manufacturing and maritime stuff and industry. And his thing is, he said, I've won over everybody who's under 50 over here, but there are these camps of these older people who are well entrenched with lots of assets who would rather see their daughters raped than lose 1% of margin. Those were the exact words he used. And so the problem is that the only lever that President Trump has that he can pull is the trade lever, because that's a power that he has as the executive. And if we can't get more economic leverage, that's a problem, right? And this is a congressional problem. If we don't get anything done, we might get beat up in the midterms and even lose in Congress. Who knows? But the problem is we need Congress to get things done. So it's an issue. So what President Trump is doing is he is making very smart moves with trade. And one of the ways to look at that as well, that I think a lot of people probably don't appreciate, is when you mess with an industry or you mess with trade rules, you can cause second and third order effects on the domestic US economy. So let's say, tariffing a product that's overseas can stimulate the domestic economy here if there's a sector for it. Look at the executive order regarding pharmaceutical prices. A lot of those drugs are made overseas. There's knock-on effects to things that you do in trade. So it's kind of like if you're using a long stick to try and start some Rube Goldberg contraption and push the marble, which goes and does everything else. That's kind of a situation that you can be stuck in, and that's not great, but it's at least a way to make some progress. But we need a lot of progress. So that's the thing, is there's too many people in too many camps who don't want their slice of the pie touched, and that becomes a problem. Now, the white pill is that for everybody who's really worried about the direction things are going, and whether you're worried about a race war or a civil war, or just total discordance in US society over all these issues. What if the damage that progressives have done to our society is just too much and it's too permanent, it won't go away? The reason why we didn't have quite as much racial tension in the 80s and the 90s is because that was an economically good time. And I mean, look, it's just universal. When people are comfortable and they have the things they want and they have a pretty good material circumstance, they tend to just be less pissed about everything. Um, and that's an important thing to note. And I mean, even note it when you look at who progressives and liberals are, right? They're usually, people who live in gated communities, and they're people who have good jobs of some sort or another. There's a reason they're overrepresented among people in academia, or people with jobs in Silicon Valley, or people who work in positions in government or have executive positions at an NGO. Um, when those people feel the pinch, I mean, the likelihood that they might, trend more conservative, or at least abandon the progressives, does kind of start to go up,
Mhm.
or at least that they might not care as much. That's a big thing. Um, so I think, and I told this too. There's an Indian guy who's in tech, very wealthy guy, net worth that dwarfs any amount of money I've ever made. Um, yeah, venture capital guy, and we were talking about the immigration situation because he went and DM'd me about it, and he said, "Well, how do we keep this from unraveling and causing all these problems and division?" And I said, well, if the economy gets substantially better to where the American cost of living goes down while our standard of living stays the same or goes up or doesn't take too much of a hit, people will just be less angry about everything. Because what people ultimately want is to be able to be productive and to be able to be compensated for that productivity, and to not be in a state of tension and stress all the time. And a big part of that is going to mean fixing the housing issue, which if we kick out a ton of immigrants, they live in houses, that's gonna cause, more supply of housing, which is going to make the market go lower. Um, but all of these things also add up to family formation, to fertility, to people having kids, and forming the future. So the economy really is a key linchpin to this. Even though there are cultural issues, even though there are political problems, as long as when people start feeling more provided for, they're going to bet on the strongest horse. They're going to bet on the people who are helping them out. So if you give the people results, that's going to win big. I mean, look how things went with Biden's term, right? Like, everyone was pissed off at the economy. 2024 rolls out, and Trump wins the popular vote. Um, Not to say that he legitimately lost 2020, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
People got pretty pissed about that. People get pissed when they can blame someone for the economy. So if we can start to provide more jobs, and we can use gainful, productive employment instead of GDP as a measure of economic prosperity, then we're going to be in a good place electorally. People are going to be happy with that. They're going to feel provided for. And everyone's going to simmer down if our standard of living is maintained. If people feel like the middle class lifestyle is attainable, if people feel like they can afford to buy a house and have kids when they're young enough to do so. If we can do that, politics will calm down a lot, because at the end of the day, that's what the people who are not super ideologically inclined actually want. They just want security.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And I guess I would ask you this then. I know that recently, like within the last 24 hours or something, Rand Paul was talking with Jesse Waters, because Rand Paul, he was catching a lot of shit for staying, principled on being against tariffs in any way, shape, or form. And that's usually a stance I would take as well, until I started looking at the kind of imbalances we had out there in the international marketplace. And I just started seeing that as an act of war. But also, it's a two-sided war there too. That there's people over here on our state side that were essentially just saying, "Go ahead, rob us," and I don't know, somewhere in some black market, you can thank us down the line. There's a little bit more going on there than some tiny little Southeast Asian country that's taking advantage of the gigantic economic juggernaut that is the United States. People are being given permission to suckle upon our veins over here. So, but when it comes to Rand Paul or anybody, because people would say, "Oh, he's compromised" or something like that. Let's say he's not compromised, and it is really just a principled take. I don't believe in tariffs in this situation. In the situation that Donald Trump is in right now, especially if he doesn't have any real congressional support that he can hang his hat on, what would you have done? Do you approve of the way that the tariffs were used in bringing people to the table? I mean, we had the United Kingdom deal. We had the Vietnam and Israel, Taiwan, Zimbabwe, zero tariffs. China is starting to come around. I don't know. I understand why they were used as a pressure tool, not as just being 100% mercantilist. What do you think about this? And how would you advise people against, in the situation we're in right now, which it is like a full spectrum war, where you should compromise on any kinds of principles when it comes? Is compromising on what would be stalwart principles in the past okay in any situation?
I'll say this much on the topic of politics and principle, and I have written about this a decent deal and talked about it. Sometimes I like Rand Paul. There's a lot of libertarians that I sometimes like, but you might have your principles, but sometimes your principles are retarded. For one, you can have a principle that's stupid or that is going to harm you, right? And at the same, or you can have a selfish principle, right? That's a common thing with libertarians. They don't, they don't really tend to give a damn unless you're a Hoppian, which is based, but they generally don't have principles that extend to making a functional society. Like a libertarian society has trouble scaling to anything bigger than like a tri-county area because of the fact that all it takes is some low trust actors to exploit your system and just start robbing people and breaking the rules. And there is no collective that it acts as an immune system to predators. So I'll say that much. Libertarianism is kind of a luxury belief system. And I say that as a guy who I was a Ron Paul guy, for a long time. And I like a lot of what Rand, says. And there are times where he stood for his principles that I've really approved. But when it comes to principles in things like politics, culture war, or a knife fight in a phone booth, principles are a luxury that you should extend to your friends, your allies, and neutral parties. You don't need to use them when it comes to your enemies, because your enemy is not going to adhere to any fixed principle with you, which this is one of the things that is a problem for conservatives, because being principled is part of the self-image of who conservatives are, is being honorable, having principles. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is the problem with principle becomes when your enemy doesn't care, they take advantage of you. It's like if you're in a war, like say Afghanistan or Iraq, right? And you have to abide by the Geneva Convention and LOAC and all these things, and then your enemy doesn't. They have you at a disadvantage. You've got an arm tied behind your back. So you should not extend principles to defeating your enemy so that you can establish security in your rule. Like we should have principles when conservatives and right-wingers have actual debates with each other about how to get things done when both sides have good intentions. You probably shouldn't be exercising noble principles when the barbarians are outside your gates.
Yeah, you're right.
You should probably just fucking kill them. That's just generally better. When something is existential, principle needs to go out of the window, because what use are principles if you die with them and you lose?
And to your point, Western society's greatest enemies right now, who are all acting as officials of that society, they are the ones that are talking constantly about existential threats. Now, that it comes from a place of projection and inversion, but still, I mean, that's the reason why the people that we're up against really have forsaken any kind of, I don't know, semblance of principle, because the projection is that liberal progressive society is under existential threat from some sort of a rising nationalist tide that needs to be dealt with now and viciously.
Yeah, and that's the thing is we just need to be able to get enough positive control over enough authority and power to be able to do good things for people so that they can trust us with that authority and with that power. And it's just kind of it's getting the mandate of heaven, right? To use a Chinese term for it. Um, that's the main name of the game. Defeat your enemies. And I guess to go back to the principles thing, one point that I wanted to make was the you see this a lot with liberals and conservatives, where conservatives will point out hypocrisy, where the liberals betray their stated principles, and the liberals just laugh at you and punch you in the nuts. And conservatives fall for it over and over again because they value principles and they don't understand that rule about no principles for your enemies. Like don't do that. And I don't know how it's like Wile E. Coyote running into like the painted tunnel on the side of the mountain over and over again. Um, a lot of conservatives just keep doing it. And when the real answer is to just know that they're always acting in bad faith, they are always your enemy. You can't deal with them. They don't want to compromise with you. If you reach a compromise with them, they're going to take that little slice of what they want and they're going to come back for the rest later. They're just a bad faith entity, and that's how we should treat them, with that type of hostility. And conservatives have taken a long time to learn that. They're starting to figure that out. But that's really the main weakness of what is supposed to be the force that can, gatekeep these people from going too far.
What do you are there any other, from your, your vantage point? I think your social commentary is what I come to your channel for a lot. As far as conservatives in the social media space and trying to use those tools to be able to compete in the marketplace of ideas and try to get some kind of organic momentum in one situation or another, be it an election or somewhere in between. What else do you think are we easily baited into? Where's our other very, very big weak point, aside from maybe underestimating the insidiousness of the opponent? What's something else that you think that conservatives, so-called conservatives, non-progressives that have the actual goodwill of Western civilization on the forefront of their mind? Where do they usually trip up the most, outside of underestimating the insidiousness of the opponent?
Wanting to be left alone. And there's not too much that we can do about that. It has to organically change. But the problem is that conservatives have historically never wanted the responsibility, and it is a responsibility, to be in charge of the country as a party, as a cultural force, as a political movement. It is a responsibility that you have to actually discharge, or else people won't vote for you and people won't trust you. Um, and conservatism has always cared a lot about managing and playing the game of empire. That's why they love war so damn much. And they basically found domestic issues to be an annoyance. Even when the base is yelling in their ears, screaming for help, saying, "Hey, you offshored all our jobs. Hey, there's opioids in all of our towns. There's all these things happening." And they just kind of like throw you some lip service and go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, we'll fix it. Just vote for us." And then they never fix it, even when they do win elections. I mean, but they sure love getting support for a war somewhere and playing the game of empire abroad. And that is a dereliction of the responsibility to rule. And there's no willingness to reign over domestic affairs when we put those people in charge. And now that's the old GOP. That's the neoconservative GOP, which is on the outs and I don't think is coming back. However, I think the new right, which is starting to form, and the new ideas and the new paradigm and the new concepts, we actually want that. We want the responsibility. We want to have authority and we want to rule and change things and make things better. And we don't want to be left alone because we've spent our entire lives not being left alone by the left. I mean, when Occupy Wall Street happened and all of a sudden, all the weird progressive stuff started to really kick into high gear,
Yep.
I was maybe 17, 18 years old when that happened. So my entire adult life has been defined by this fucking insanity. And I want it to stop because I have kids. I don't want my kids to be subjected to that. Um, but if you look at Gen Z, who voted for Trump in spades, like compared to how liberal or conservative millennials were at that age, Gen Z is already kind of outdoing us. And most people who go conservative don't flip-flop later in life and go liberal. Usually, it's the whole saying about how people who are younger are liberal and older are conservative. If you get a young generation to start looking for tradition, deciding it's cool to be right wing, wanting stability, wanting to be able to buy a house and get married and have a family and have a halfway decent job where they can work hard, but they get compensated for that productivity. If whoever's winning the youth movement really is winning, and we're winning the youth movement, even if it's winning men. Uh, so I think it's just we have to not, I guess to sum it up, we have to not want to be left alone. Instead of wanting to be left alone, we have to want to be in charge. We have to want the responsibility of being in charge and discharging it competently to make things better. We have to really want that if we want to beat these people long term.
There you go. And we have to be willing to arrest a few judges here and there, too. That'd be great as well. But I'm so happy to have you back on, Aristo. I hope that people go and check you out. One of my favorite accounts on Twitter. There it is right there, at Aristos_revenge. I have it in the description of the episode. You have anything coming out soon? I know you write for a number of outlets, and you're always active on Twitter. But what should people look out for when they come and look into what you got going on?
Well, I've got a lot of irons in the fire. A couple I'm not quite ready to announce yet. I do have I am starting a video game publisher, and I'm going to try to help people who feel frozen out by the industry and be able to get their stuff published on Steam and elsewhere. People who don't want to go ahead and and have stupid woke crap in their games. They don't want to be stuck in a position where they don't have any editorial control over the content that they're making. And I just want people to make good stuff. So I try to be a big supporter with the platform that I have of people who want to write good books, people who want to make, some sort of good product of media or the arts, whether it's from books to video games, whatever it is. So that's what I always try to support. So I haven't announced it officially yet. It'll probably be sometime in early June, but I will be announcing a video game publishing studio that I've started, and we will have a title that I'm not going to name it yet. That'll be in early access, but beyond that, no real big projects. I'm just posting and just kind of reacting to what's going on, and always out there to support any projects that look good. Just there to help people out.
Well, you know what? It's making a difference. It's at the very least, it's cathartic. So I'm happy you came back, and I'm looking forward to the future. We got to do this more often because there's plenty of topics we can hit up that are newsworthy, but just you need nuance to be able to stretch out with some of these conversations, and I can hang my hat on that one with you. So thanks again for the time tonight, my friend.
Yeah, no problem, man. It was great coming back on with you. Looking forward to doing it another time.
You got it. Have a great one, and all the best to you and the family.
Thanks. You too.
All right, everybody. There he goes. It's a wonderful night. It was a wonderful night. I knew this one was going to be good, and it is. So for the rest of the time being, we have 35 minutes left. I want to take your calls, and I will get to a couple of the open tabs over here and your super chats. So over on the YouTube, we have a small super chat goal over there. If we hit it, I will do an added Friday morning coffee Q&A where I'm just sitting there and reading the chat room and having a ball. Mondays was actually a lot of fun. It was the last sunny day we had. It was just yesterday, but still, by the time Friday rolls around, Monday will have been the last sunny day we had. I'll also be reading the Rumble rants and the gold pills. I'll be back in a flash. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere.
Hey guys, I'm in New York City just hanging out.
I eat babies. I eat them every night. I eat them with barbecue sauce. And I flew to the moon last night with a witch. And I took DMT with Easter bunnies. Now that's an example of being crazy. I mean, this is art. And I'm not saying what I do politically is art, but everything is an art form. Oh yeah, one more. 17, 76. More? Fan it up. Fucking eyes. Oh, shit.
Quite Frankly and Rise Attire have come together to create a merchandise collection that is sure to draw eyes and start conversation. High-quality t-shirts and hoodies that are perfect gifts for the Franklies in your life, or even if you just want to treat yourself. You can wear your Quite Frankly gear proudly, knowing that everyone else around you is a fucking loser for not already knowing about the show. So go to the merch tab on quitefrankly.tv and check out the growing collection of Quite Frankly classics, including the Founding Frankly, the Quite Nationals baseball tees and hoodies, the special edition Tony Black tee, or Protest the United Nations like a Chad. It's all laid out for you there on the quitefrankly.tv merch page. And remember, when you wear Quite Frankly merchandise, you're simply better than you were when you were naked.
He's been down in the basement since it happened. 5 days now. I think he's having some kind of a mental situation. You know, an episode or something.
All right. I see it past the touchy on the left.
Hey, you better do something. 'Cause I don't want to be known as the brother-in-law of the town nutjob. I got enough problems already. Oh, shit. I got water all over myself.
What's this? Krista, the producer, sent this to me. Gingers are black. Black people, if they have red hair. What is this? This is from Instagram? Something from Instagram? From Yahoo Life. The viral gingers are black conversation has caused shockwave with a surprising new narrative. Some white redheads or gingers see themselves as the black people of the white race. Oh no. Oh no. A TikTok creator shared parallels between redheads and blacks. In the same way, this is a quote, certain types of white people have to let you know that they have black friends. They interacted with a black person before, she explains. They do the same thing. They do the same thing. They have to tell me that their cousin 3 times removed was a redhead. She highlighted other similarities, including unsolicited hair touching, being fetishized, and the portrayal of redheads and fair-skinned people as interchangeable in the media. Now, is this could be real. Maybe it is. Maybe it's real. But it also could be like the birds are fake. Is it like the birds are all replaced by robots and it's just a very subtle trolling? The viral gingers are black conversation. Well, is that real? Is that real red hair? Can I touch it? If I had flaming red hair, I'm sure people would want to touch my head too. Would I let them? Probably not. I probably wouldn't let them. No, don't touch me, please. I'd prefer you not touch me. That's what I would say. Okay, let's see here. Jay Britt says, great topics and discussion with Aristo. Thank you, Frank. Well, thank you, and thank you, Aristo. It was a great show. I knew it was going to be. Over on Rumble, let's see what's going on over there with the Rumble rants. Hey, would you blow me? Says, the definition of the N-word in the 80s was an ignorant person, and I believe that if you're a Negroer, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what race you are. Well, a lot of code words being used right now. Miss Maniac 666 says, I've always heard that so many bad people are having so many children, and that the good people have to have so many children just to keep up with the bad people. Well, it's not about good or bad, I guess. I don't know about that. I thought that the commentary laid down by the movie Idiocracy was a little bit more clear and actually relates to what we're going through right now. We have a lot of different factors. There's environmental, there's political factors going on there, but especially economic factors. Now, in the beginning of Idiocracy, you have the two well-adjusted, gainfully employed, responsible thinking, the couple that is trying to plan for the perfect time. When can we have, when should we have a baby? Is it the right time? Are we making enough? Are we in a stable environment? Like trying to check all the boxes to make sure the child is provided for in the most stable way possible, and just trying to plan. And in the course of planning, years go by and biological clocks are running out. And maybe at the end of it all, they have one child or none. They miss the boat altogether. Meanwhile, they juxtapose the planners and or the people who it's a responsible way of thinking. It is. And this is why people are saying, hey, something else here too. The economic pressures of what we're living under right now that we didn't have in the 1950s, that we didn't need to have two parents out of the home and working. And of course, when you start getting men and women out of the home and working for one reason or another, before the, liberation movements and all that other stuff, and it was more just about empowerment and stuff, and it was less about empowerment and more about how are we going to cover the damn bills. We have to get out of the house, and everybody has to haul ass. That right there is it's a very big consideration these days. People feel like they're drowning, and if you're drowning and you're having a hard enough time keeping the lights on for yourself and perhaps your spouse or whoever the hell you're living with, then the thought of bringing children into the situation seems daunting. And that is a big, big hindrance to society growing and remaining healthy. The most basic unit of any functional society is the household, as you all know. And that is what's juxtaposed against each other in the beginning of Idiocracy. The people who are planning, who are trying to look at their prospects and just, trying to get it right. And then they go to the trailer park and it's just that they don't really have a lot of money. They don't have a lot of prospects, but they don't give a shit. They are breeding like rabbits. They just don't give a shit. And it's one of those things. It's one of those things. Who had the better deal at the end of it all? I don't, and so I wouldn't categorize that as an example of good versus bad, but there is an economic and there's a socioeconomic element to that is very relevant in people's lives right now. Though we have to overcome it, because to say, oh, well, I don't have a lot of money and you got, don't let it stop you from starting a family. Figure it out with a child. Try, because now you're talking about the matters of the species survival. And it's not just, okay, then we got to struggle then. That's the way I see it right now. And just keep trying. So thank you, Miss Maniac. Let's see what else we have over here. Jay Semo says, great show, great guest, great discussion. Thank you. Well, thank you, Jay. Thank you so much. Over on YouTube, 3 Dots says, let's get this party started. 9 others out there. Well, there's a whole bunch of people watching, and I'm glad you guys are out there having. Hopefully, the conversation's been good for you wherever you've been having it. In the many chat rooms out there. Safety Net 820 says, group hug, one love, Lynn. Thank you, C. Blanche, as well, for the can. And Sentinel says, I was thinking of making a meme where Mr. Trump says, what is that? Ike in Afrikaner? Like JFK saying Ike in Berliner. Well, I don't know how to say any of it, so I didn't do anybody good. Great show, Frank, says the Sentinel. Thank you, sir. And hat tip to Molly as well. Here's a little something. Here's something for you. The African National Congress. You want to put this into perspective. And this was sent to me by Aristo not too long ago. This is the part right here. Okay, Mueller, this guy Mueller says that this is from the African National Congress, Department of Communications, Information, and Publicity. May 13th, 2025 for immediate release. The African National Congress rejects falsehood of Afrikaner refugees. Okay? Listen to this. The African National Congress registers its firm rejection of the United States government's decision to grant refugee status to 49 individuals self-identifying Afrikaners. Let it be categorically stated that there are no Afrikaner refugees in South Africa. No section of our society is hounded, persecuted, or subjected to ethnic victimization. These claims are fabrication and a cowardly political construct designed to delegitimize our democracy and insult the sacrifices made by generations who fought for freedom. I would say probably 99.8% of everybody that crossed the border over the last 4.5 years were not asylum seekers. Were not asylum seekers. They were not running from anything. The only thing they were running from was having a little bit less money for ramen noodles. This year, as we commemorate the 70th anniversary of Freedom Charter, we recall its enduring truth. Now, here, listen to this section right here. What the instigators of this falsehood seek is not safety, but impunity from transformation. They flee not from persecution, but from justice, equality, and accountability for historic privilege. Listen to that one part. Now, I would have never seen it if it wasn't passed along to me. That one line. Now, the guy who took this and highlighted it and tweeted it out there is very right. He says this part right here means they got away before we had a chance to get our revenge and punish them. Listen to that. What the instigators of this falsehood, that made it smaller. Well, the instigator of this falsehood, this that there was some sort of a thing to run from, seek. They're not looking for safety over here in the United States, but they're looking for impunity from transformation. Now they can be free from feeling what full transformation of South African society post-apartheid is really going to be about. They flee not from persecution, but from justice, equality, and accountability for historic privilege. They are going to be held accountable for privilege that had been, I guess, just given to them in the past. So, thank God they got out of there, because what's coming their way probably is not justice for any sane person, but there's not a lot of sane people running that country. So, just putting that out there. Okay, let's see here. Let's see. We got a couple other things that I want to do. I have a couple of sound bites from Donald Trump in Saudi Arabia. And then we can take some of your calls. You can get those phones ready at 914-200-0269. Let's see here. Far too many American presidents have been afflicted with the notion that it's our job to look into the souls of foreign leaders. Let's listen to this.
In recent years, far too many American presidents have been afflicted with the notion that it's our job to look into the souls of foreign leaders and use U.S. policy to dispense justice for their sins. They loved using our very powerful military, and now it's really the most powerful it's ever been. We just are getting a budget approved, $1 trillion, highest budget we've ever had in history for military, $1 trillion. And we're getting the greatest missiles, the greatest weapons. And, I hate to do it, but you have to do it because we believe in peace through strength. You have to have the strength, otherwise bad things could happen. But
guys, do you think that we could have a unparalleled military for less than $1 trillion? Especially if we left NATO and we just began thinking about United States interests around the world. I mean, it's not like we leave the planet if we leave NATO Like, oh, the United States is gone. Better not try to take over Europe now. Or maybe it's time to take over Europe because the United States has left the planet. These are the things that don't make me all feel star-spangled amazing. Okay? $1 trillion for the defense budget for the first time ever? I don't care about that shit. I think we can do a lot with a lot less. I really do. Now I understand what you stand up there in front of all these world leaders in this one region right there, and you want to talk glowingly about your military might. I understand that, but I don't know. That dollar sign makes me sick.
But hopefully, we'll never have to use any of those weapons. Seems to be an awfully big waste of money if you're never going to use them, but hopefully we'll never have to use them because the destructive power of some of those weapons are like nobody's seen before. I believe it is God's job to sit in judgment, my job to defend America, and to promote the fundamental interest of stability, prosperity, and peace. That's what I really want to do.
So that's a little bit of what we got today. And then he gave an ultimatum to Iran. Take a listen to this.
Yet I'm here today not merely to condemn the past chaos of Iran's leaders, but to offer them a new path and a much better path toward a far better and more hopeful future. As I've shown repeatedly, I am willing to end past conflicts and forge new partnerships for a better and more stable world, even if our differences may be very profound, which obviously they are in the case of Iran. I have never believed in having permanent enemies. I am different than a lot of people think. I don't like permanent enemies, but sometimes you need enemies to do the job, and you have to do it right. Enemies get you motivated. In fact, some of the closest friends of the United States of America are nations we fought wars against in generations past, and now they're our friends and our allies. I want to make a deal with Iran. If I can make a deal with Iran, I'll be very happy if we're going to make your region and the world a safer place. But
now I wonder what's going to go on with that. It's made people reflexively ask once again, why not flex like this on Israel and Palestine? I know there were some rumors over the last couple of days that there was going to be an announcement of acknowledging Palestinian statehood, and then those rumors were kind of cast away. But not a single person in my personal life would be able to tell you if a gun was put to their head, they wouldn't be able to tell you what a Houthi is to save their lives. Okay, so I don't know. I just wonder about all of that. But then again, there's other things, other strange things that came up on the Israel front there too, like canceled meetings and trips by U.S. officials, and I don't know. It's been an interesting week with all the economic news and this over there in Saudi Arabia. I think this was all attached to like $140 billion weapons package. So again, I like talking about leveling out trade and just giving people here at home the motivation to go out there and live their lives and produce stuff and not have to give up so much or any bits of the fruits of their labor to anybody that they don't want to, namely the government that's going to go out there and buy votes and cobble together electoral coalitions of people who hate one another. But at the same time, I don't know, being in the weapons business, there's a lot going on here. What's this on India and Pakistan? Well, here's an example of Trump saying today that he actually got the guns to stop firing between India and Pakistan. We were talking about that this time last week. And here's how he said he did it.
Weeks. People said it would take 4 years, 5 years. We did it in 3 weeks. Just days ago, my administration successfully brokered a historic ceasefire to stop the escalating violence between India and Pakistan. And I used trade to a large extent to do it. I said, fellas, come on, let's make a deal. Let's do some trading. Let's not trade nuclear missiles. Let's trade the things that you make so beautifully. And they both have very powerful leaders, very strong leaders, good leaders, smart leaders. And it all stopped. Hopefully it'll remain that way, but it all stopped. I was very proud of Marco Rubio and all of the people that worked so hard. Marco, stand up. What a great job you did on that. Thank you, J.D. Vance, Marco. The whole group worked with you, but it was a great job. And, they're actually getting along. Maybe we can even get them together a little bit, Marco, where they go out and have a nice dinner together. Wouldn't that be nice? But we've come a long way, and it could be, millions of people could have died from that conflict. That's
what I hear. That's what I hear. 914-200-0269. We're here for a couple more minutes, so you can I'd love to take your calls. And we'll just open it up to anything now. Have a few more. This guy released, what is this? I'll save this for tomorrow. We've got the Nephilim Death Squad coming back on tomorrow. That should be a lot of fun. A lot of fun. I got a little bit of news on, of course, posthumous good news for Pete Rose, which is ridiculous. So ridiculous. Talk about culture. Major League Baseball removed Pete Rose and 16 other deceased individuals from the permanently ineligible list on Tuesday, Commissioner Rob Manfred announced. In reinstating Rose, Manfred also reinstated the following individuals who have passed away. So now that he's dead, he's no longer banned for gambling, betting on himself to win. And he never, damn it. He used to be hanging out outside of the Hall of Fame, signing balls. And that's just not right. Hey, Jay from Oregon, how the hell you been, man?
Are you real?
It's been a long time. Good to hear from you.
Serious? Okay, is this Frank?
Yes. How you doing, man?
All right, this doesn't sound like you're Frank, but I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. How's the house doing?
Well, the house, I mean, it's a roof over my head, and I'm very happy with it. This is a roof over my head over here too at the studio. It's been, I feel like we haven't spoken in years.
No, we haven't. And it doesn't sound like you at all, Frank. Are you sure this isn't like a pre-screening deal that they got going now? Because it doesn't sound like Frank at all.
Really? What has changed from the last time you spoke to me? Do you remember what's changed with Frank's voice?
Well, it's just a different person. Do you want me to explain the intricacies? Oh, wait, the intricacies? Oh, fuck that. I'm too drunk to go into all that. All I was trying to do was connect with Frank and say hi.
Okay, well, Jay, it's Frank. I promise you it's Frank, and I'm happy that you're having a happy hour kind of a night tonight, and I'm happy you called me up, and it's good to hear from you for the first time in a while. And here's one thing I'll tell you before we get off, and hopefully you call me back again. I just recently, somebody close to the show sent me a wonderful gift, I think for a belated birthday gift, and it was a drumstick that was used and signed by Vinnie Paul. And I know you're a Pantera fan, right?
Well, I'm a drumstick fan.
Yeah.
Drumstick. I know nothing about Pantera. I know about drumsticks, and I love drumsticks.
Wait a second. I thought that you knew. Didn't you know Vinnie Paul or something like that?
No, not at all.
Are you sure? No. Your brother? Do you have a brother that did? Why do I feel like I was so convinced that this was you?
You know what? It seems like this is an AI. Are you an AI?
No, it's not. Well, listen, Jay, it's good to hear from you. You call me back some other time. I know who Jay from Oregon is. He's been calling in for a long time. In fact, his number popped up because he was one of the few old Skype contacts that actually was accepted by Zoom, but we can't keep doing that. Anyway, 8:49 p.m. 8:49 p.m. Give me a buzz. There's one last thing I'll say over here. You want to talk about hard times? You want to talk about hard times? Balancing the checkbook at home. A man has been busted for stealing a historic cannon from a park to pay off his drug dealer. I wonder what he was trying to get. Well, maybe they'll tell us. A man in Wichita, Kansas has been arrested for stealing a historic cannon from the Spanish-American War in order to settle a debt with a drug dealer who was threatening him. The story reads like something out of a movie, like The Goonies or something. After being unable to load the cannon into his car, he returned with tools and cut the cannon into pieces and then brought one of the pieces to the dealer in order to prove that he was trying to pay off his debt. The dealer was unimpressed. Oh my gosh. What kind of piece? God, what the hell's with the picture? What is with everybody's feet and these rotting legs? And gosh, there's pictures of ads all over the place. And it can't just be like, 1-800-Flowers or something like that. It's people's arms and legs rotting. And there's just goiters and hammer toe and everything else. Like, what the hell is wrong with everybody? You only find it on conservative news sites, too. Dean, how are you?
Go ahead, Levi.
Get dressed, you're going.
Get dressed, you're going.
Yes.
Exactly.
Finally, the new generation is hip to the new terms.
Talk to him.
What?
Dean, are you there?
Frank.
Yo.
Frank.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that was Levi.
Yes, I understood that wasn't you. But then there was an awkward silence in between. I didn't know who I was talking to at that point.
Yeah, because he was confused. I dialed the phone and handed it to him. I said, when Frank answers, you say, get dressed, you're going.
Get dressed, you're going. See?
Yeah.
I hope that he's got to practice that. He's got to keep that phrase with him for the rest of his life.
Yeah. Been teaching him about it. It's a good phrase.
Good.
I say it all the time, and I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, you got to say that to all your coworkers. That's a good one right there.
No, I say it to them, too. And they're like, what the hell are you talking about?
They will soon.
I mean, you get a bunch of guardsmen at fucking 4 o'clock in the morning, and you just look over, and one of them's bitching about something. You just look over and say, get dressed, you're going. They're like, what the hell are you talking about?
Especially when it's snowing outside.
Yeah.
Especially when it's snowing. That's when I would use it.
Yeah, when it's cold and snowy, you said you should say you should dress better because you're going.
That's right. I like it.
Dress for the elements.
Well, Dean, thank you for calling in and brightening my night up. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
I mean, not a whole lot. No, not really.
Okay.
Not a whole bunch. I just thought it'd be fun for me to hand the phone to Levi, and I was hoping he would talk, but
that's fine. He did.
I mean, I hope to make it to the meetup in September. We'll have to see how logistics work out for that. I got 3 small children here at home, so
I get you. Listen, whatever it is, it's an exciting time for us over here, only because ready to try some new things and all that. But it's the first of many, and
yeah,
God willing, and I just hope that whatever happens, I'm sure that we'll be able to meet a lot of good people across the country. The more we do stuff like this, and the more we hit the road, and yeah, get a mobile broadcast rig together, and I'll just go out and hit the road. And I'll broadcast from a gas station somewhere. It doesn't matter. But thanks for the call, Dean, and thank you. Thank Levi for brightening my night up a little bit.
All right, buddy. All right, man. Love you.
Have a good one. Be well to the whole family. All right, guys and gals. That's it for tonight. that's it for tonight. Good show. Tomorrow, another good show. We got great guests and the topics. Who knows? Maybe we'll be able to check in on the Hamadi guy, the Antichrist, or the guy who says he's not the Antichrist. He's just, the successor of Jesus himself. So this can go anywhere. I'm loving it. I like Wednesday nights. And then Thursday should be great too. By the way, just so you know, Thursday night, because Aurora's feeling a lot better today, but I can tell she's going to need another day and a half, and she's got something going on Friday, and I don't think that she's going to be doing T-ball on Thursday night. So Thursday night is going to be a regular 7 o'clock start, not 7:30, and I'll be able to do it from here instead of Studio B. So that will be good. That'll be good because we have a really interesting night with Michael Collins talking about ancient archaeological sites and hidden history and all of that stuff. And then Jason Burmis on with us on Friday. So great time that we have leading up into the weekend. Have yourself a good evening. And send me some love in the emails. Frank at quitefrankly.tv. Please become a sponsor of the show. Just throwing that out there. I put a lot of behind-the-scenes goodies onto Patreon Subscribestar, and what you get in return for especially a low end of the pool, $5 a month, you get at least $200 worth of value in return. I work hard to make sure that the value that you get for what you put in is so much more, and that's with the future in mind. So thank you all so much. Be well. I'll see you tomorrow, and have yourself a good night. Oh, let me make sure I didn't miss anybody. Oh, 3 Dots says, here's your yellow super chat, you weirdos. Now I'm the racist. Anyone else going to join in or just laugh at me? P.S. Love the show, Frank, but your t-shirt choices are a bit unimpressive. What do you mean? It gets wrinkled. It bunches up a little bit. I feel that. But I actually like the solid tones. I like the charcoal grays and the blacks. I want to do that a little bit more. And I don't know what to... Then again, if you're not a woman, I hope 3 Dots is a woman. Because that's weird. Very unimpressive, Frank. Wear something else for me, baby. You better be a woman. Is 3 Dots a woman? Because that'll be at least the acceptable criticism. Other than that, other than being dressed and undressed by 3 Dots, thank you all so much. I appreciate you greatly. Alex Akimu says, wonderful guest and always appreciate your analysis of current events. Thank you, Frank. That is from Rumble. Wonderful Rumble rant over there. Appreciate you guys more and more. I will see you guys tomorrow night. Take care. Good night. Bye-bye. That's not what I meant to do. No!
I'll catch you on the flip.
Everybody else shit. Fuck! Everybody else shit. Fuck! Everybody else shit. Fuck! Everybody else shit. Fuck!